Hey, Holland, do you hear me?
Yep. You hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Welcome, everybody. We're just going to give it a few more minutes and then we can get started at 3.
Holland, do you see my screen?
Nope.
Yep, we did. I think you stopped. There you go.
How are you guys doing today?
We're
Hi.
good.
Good.
Right on. Killer. I saw you guys had some fins, like some surf fins on the thing. That was dope.
Well, what was it?
You had some surf fins like
Yeah.
the thing that you had. I was like, this is like rad.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that I think you're talking about our directory for Pacific City in Huntington Beach.
Nice. Right on.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, that's killer.
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I just got out of the water actually like 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago.
Love that. What
Yeah.
school do you go to?
I got an LCAD.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely. It's solid.
It's a great place to be for sure. That was where I went to school.
Nice. Right on. Um, are you is your fiance Daniel?
Yeah. Are you taking his class?
Yeah, I'm taking his
That's
class.
awesome. Full circle.
Yeah, it's super great. I heard you guys are getting married soon.
We
Congratulations.
are. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
that's
awesome
incredible.
to hear one of his students is on.
Yeah, no, it's a fun class. I
Awesome.
haven't taken a packaging class before, so that was the first time, and I'm actually really excited to do some more stuff with it.
Great.
So yeah, no, it's super cool. Yeah, congratulations again for sure.
Thanks. That's very sweet.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get going in just a few minutes. Thank you guys for joining us today.
There we go. Hello, can you hear us?
Hi, Courtney.
Holland.
Thank you for coming.
Yes,
So exciting to see you guys.
thank you for having us. Let's see here. Here is my typography class right now, and
Um,
it is fall holiday, and fall holiday in the afternoon before everybody leaves. This is all we have left on, but we really appreciate you guys, and we're excited to hear.
Thanks
Aw.
for joining.
Yeah.
Aw.
So yeah, I'm gonna put it on there. Um, thank you for hosting this wonderful experience.
Yeah, we're so excited. This is our first time doing this. And yeah, we are so excited to see you guys and meet everyone. We invited a handful of schools.
Good.
Yeah. And I see we have about 36 people on here. And I think I think honestly we can just get going and people will file in.
Perfect.
Ray and Cody, are you guys ready?
Yeah,
We're ready.
good.
We're ready.
Love it. Okay, I'll introduce myself really quick and then I'll turn it over to Ray and Cody to introduce themselves. But my name is Holland Keller. I work at RSM. I've been working here for just over 3 years now, and I serve as our marketing manager. I went to Point Loma Nazarene University and graduated in 2022. And Courtney Mayer was my professor and fearless leader through my graphic design degree. But yeah, I studied graphic design and I had an emphasis in marketing. And then Ray, why don't you introduce yourself next?
Yeah, great. I'm Ray Peterson. I'm a senior designer here at RSM. I've been here for about 5 years, and I went to LCAD, and I hear that there's a few of you on here, which is super exciting. But I'm within the EGD and wayfinding spectrum of RSM, so we'll be talking a little bit about that experience here shortly with Cody Clark.
Cool. Yeah, great to see everybody. Thanks for joining. Pretty awesome foray here for us. But Cody Clark, I lead our LA studio for RSM. I've been at RSM for, I don't even know, a very long time. 17 years or something like that in total. I was the first employee when we were in a garage, right? So that was pretty cool. And here we are 28 years later. I've been in the industry 30 years. I studied at Pratt Institute in fine art, and then I studied at Art Center, College of Design in Pasadena for graphic design and packaging degree, and then started teaching a year out of graduation in a range of kind of letterpress printing, print making, and then environmental spatial graphics and kind of transmedia classes. So kind of a lot of teaching in my 25 years or so outside of graduation.
Love it. For today's class, we'll run up against 4 p.m. So this class will just be an hour, and we're gonna leave some time at the end to do a Q&A. And we're gonna do a Q&A through the Q&A feature at the bottom. So if you go on the bottom right corner of your screen, you might have to click the three dots that say more, but there should be a little question box called Q&A, and you can put your questions in there as we go through the class, and then we'll get to as many as we can at the end. And then that's all I had for announcements and housekeeping, so I'll turn it over to Cody and Ray.
Awesome. Thanks, Holland. So yes, you're in the inaugural Learning Lab 1, right? Amazing. You're here and we're here. So we're super excited about that. Really, the focus of today is like translating brand into the built environment. As students, as faculty, we're all even our own profession. There's very few specific curriculums across the world that study environmental graphic design or spatial graphics or architectural graphics, whatever you'd like to call it. So we all have a foray from traditional graphic design, packaging, sometimes industrial design, and even architecture. So, where we wanted to start was really just talking a little bit about brands and a little bit about identities and narratives and graphic stories and how those impact the physical space. because it has definitely a different kind of character to it and opportunities for designers. So I'm not going to go super deep into kind of learning objectives, but again, we want to kind of just touch on roles. Our roles are kind of analogous to what you know as students too. Like, we're brought to the table to provide graphic design solutions. Ours just happen to be big and spatial and multi-surfaces. So we'll talk a little bit about the role that we play within design teams and design studios and other consultants and even clients, which I think it's a cool opportunity for us to kind of to think that way and connect the dots. We'll talk a little bit about like how our work changes based on different markets. So from retail to community work. And the design process might be slightly different in the questions we ask ourselves and our clients as designers, and then people that are paying us to design something might be also different. And so that's kind of a cool process through case studies. And then we'll go through again 4 different case studies pretty quickly and leave room for questions. But the goal is that you learn, we've kind of pitched them where you're learning different aspects of how we work, right? And kind of the questions as designers when you first start a project, what could you be asking to dive better conversations about design or needs or users? So I'll just kind of brief about RSM. RSM, like I said, we started 28 years ago in a garage in San Clemente. Husband and wife turned now 44 people with offices from San Clemente, where Ray and Holland are sitting, where I used to sit, to Dallas, to Los Angeles, where my studio is, to New York City. So we just opened an office in New York City on 23rd Street. So we're super excited about that. And it takes a team. You're seeing 3 people from our studio of 44, but we all approach design from a different perspective. Some of us more traditionally from graphic design, industrial design. We have brand strategists. We have architects. So we have people that approach design and design thinking from different perspectives to collectively design solutions, which is pretty cool. RSM, our focus as a design studio is really narrow. We do the majority of work that we do is really in the architectural world, even from a traditional branding perspective. So we really work in space, and that idea of working across the world, and being able to blend branding, traditional identity systems, graphic design, but also placemaking, art, wayfinding, across different cultures and contexts around the world just offers a lot of different design solutions for the people we design for. So we kind of wanted to go to the root here is like people often ask, well, what do you do? Like my mom always asked that, right? She's like, well, what are you actually doing? So what is architectural graphic design? There's a lot of kind of analogous terms to this. You'll hear environmental graphic design, experiential design, spatial branding, spatial narrative, branded interiors, things like that. There's a lot of kind of analogous terms. But in our world, that really means, again, 2 basic elements. One is wayfinding. So, how do you direct people from one thing to another thing, right? So there's a lot of great psychology. There's a lot of great, design practices that are rooted in that, and we'll see a couple of examples of those. The second element is environmental graphics, right? So you probably have heard that term. And again, those are graphic narratives that transform spaces and create meaning between the people that are reading it and experiencing it to that place in particular, right? If you think about a poster design or a bus stop or even a book, right? Each one of those has a tangible design experience that you want to communicate through whatever medium that really is. Ours just happens to be buildings and spaces and places. So how do we do it? A little bit about our process. Um, we design, honestly, we start with people. So we really dig into this really integrated approach when we start a project in the early discovery stages of a project, not just understanding the design brief, which everybody on the call is familiar with a design brief, Like, what am I going to do? What's my scope? How am I going to do it? Ours really goes deeper than that. We want to understand the human needs. We want to understand who's using a space. Why are they using a space? What's important to them? Why is it important to them? So we spend quite a bit of time in our discovery stage before we even put pen to paper, and we're asking those questions. And I think that allows us deeper meaning with the things that we're designing. And I think for us, we hear a lot of commentary about RSM, and the focus is not really RSM in general, but it's like, how do you create a space that people feel something? And how do you create a space where people want to go back to? And I think that's the power of environmental graphic design because it goes past a traditional format of medium, and we have the ability to kind of shape someone's kind of day-to-day or repeat experience. Um, Another one of our methodologies um, really is contextual because we deal in context, space, communities, buildings, churches, schools, shopping malls, hotels, anything, right? And so every space has a consideration. And for us, it goes past, again, I'm designing an object, right? Like a poster, but I'm going to how is that poster now the size of a building and what's the context of that? How are people seeing it? How are they engaging it? What are the first thing they see? What's the second thing they see? So we use this methodology called certainty, variety, and delight, which we love. Like this is kind of a hallmark of RSM. It allows us to think about all spaces, no matter where they are, how big they are, how small they are, in these kind of three different categories. And one is the certainty. It's the comfort. It's what's familiar. How do I know I've arrived? How do I know what the brand is? Have I arrived? Right? Or am I on my way? Right? So there, that certainty from a branding standpoint is really, really important. But we also think that variety, every space needs variety, right? So people want to discover, they want to explore. Think about all the places you guys go, right? And why do you go there? Right? Sometimes it's practical, but sometimes it's like you want to hang out with friends, but you just love being there. And sometimes there's ways that, again, we're not sure exactly why we love it, right? But usually there's a designer at work behind the scenes, kind of choreographing it. And the third component is really delight. We want spaces to feel like we always say, if there's not a wow moment, then we don't really want to do it, right? We want there to be something that people find exciting or meaningful or like joyful. And the last piece that I'll talk about, which kind of gives way to our case studies, is we want to connect those stories, those graphic narratives, to something larger, right? And we broke it down into these four different things. So this idea of like thinking, activating, inspiring, and connecting. So really to make a space tangible for people. And how do you take one space and a graphic narrative and put those things together and make it meaningful? You have to really touch different parts of human nature. And that's where you really dig into something that's really, really powerful. And we'll go through these a little bit in more detail, but this idea of as you see these examples, these are things as a designer you can ask yourself, like as I'm designing a project, regardless of what the medium is how am I creating connection for the person that's going to use it or interact with it or read it or be enveloped by it, right? And we think that these four different ways are ways for people to do that. So I'll hand it over to Ray to talk about a project called Row and how to inspire people.
Perfect. Yeah, one of the biggest questions, how do we connect with meaning, purpose, and integrity? So this is all about coming up with a strong narrative behind something. We all can design something really beautiful, but you have to give a why behind it to really give a meaning and a purpose. So this case study, this project is called the RO. It's in Houston. It's in a very affluent region of Houston called the River Oaks, hence the RO. This was all about balancing this sense of high-end affluent, but also this sense of old world inspiration. There's a lot of inspiration of old art museums in this region, so we wanted people to slow down and look at all of the details as if they're walking throughout an art museum. And so how do we implement those details throughout this space? And one of the ways that we do this is looking at the four pillars of storytelling. And those four pillars are place, purpose, people, and plot. And it's basically a way for us to research and dive into a project. That way, we are building all of these pillars up to really give a meaning to our designs. So, place, that's the foundation. That's where you are. It's the history, it's the cultural context, the significance of the location. This just gives this feeling of authenticity and roots to the place that you're at. The purpose is the function. So this is a multi-use district. So there's retail, there's offices, there will be a hotel, there will be residences. So it's understanding why people are coming and also giving people who are coming for a certain reason a different reason to come back and experience something different. Then there's the people, which is arguably one of the most important pieces of storytelling because these are the people who will be sharing that story and understanding your users and understanding what they're looking for, not only from a functional standpoint of getting people from point A to point B, but also what do these people look for in terms of the brand voice and experience altogether. And then the last is the plot, which is the journey. How do you want people to experience, even from parking their car to walking to the shops? We always say that the parking garage is like the front door. And so, even that, something so small, is opening the experience up for everyone. And so, we've plopped in some of the renderings from this project. And I'll talk through some of the points, just having to go through place and plot and people and all of those things. So you can see how we've wanted to treat these things artistically. So that large RO sculptural piece on the facade was something that we wanted to integrate, and it's driving around the perimeter of the building. And so it's making sure that from different scales and different perspectives, you're having some kind of identity to the brand, but also having something really artful and meaningful so that you remember as you're driving throughout. You can keep going, Cody. Perfect. Some other things are just some details of the wayfinding. We wanted to have a lot of craftsmanship within these pieces. So how do you get people who are looking for places to shop want to interact with the signs? So we wanted to give some dimensionality to that and also have some different pieces of mixed materials and embracing the landscape and really make it feel like you're coming up to something and looking down at an art piece rather than just trying to find your way around. And just having different pinpoints of having that certainty of you're arriving to the elevator core, but integrating that with the architecture so it feels like it's layered within the space. A big piece of this too was also creating layers that felt different from one another. So you can make a signage system where everything is the same, but to us, it's really important to have different kinds of forms and functionality. That way people experience something different each time they come and they look for those little breadcrumbs of the brand sculptures throughout the landscaping or the painted brick that looks like it's been there for 100 years to give it that old world feeling, or some more places of just, I'm going to meet you at the central lawn, but giving it that identity to give people that confidence that they've arrived. And again, like I said, that lower right image is our concept for the parking garage. We wanted to make it feel like you are entering an art gallery. And so we framed the whole vestibule and put in an art piece to what would otherwise just be a CMU block wall is now an experience as you're waiting for your elevator to really dive in and feel like you're entering something special. And just on all surfaces, we also say a lot, look up, look down, and look forward. And we want to put something on all of those surfaces to really grab people's attention and experience. So even implementing something on the underside of that bridge or pushing and pulling the bricks to create something special is just using every surface available in the architecture to add that graphic layer. Now, this second one is a similar process, but just in a little bit of a different way. How do we activate a project? And how do we collaborate with all of the other people who are on a project to create something that feels really seamless? So this project is called Lulu's Place. It's in Los Angeles. It has a sister campus in Anaheim for the Tiger Woods Foundation. And this one is all about tennis. And it's a whole campus that is serving underprivileged youth. It has a lot of money from donors. So we had this kind of mixed problem of how do you create signage and wayfinding that is for young students and kids, but also holds the sophistication of these really large donors. And it's also just trying to make sure that we are listening to all of the different consultants that are on the team to make it feel like everything was then designed by one hand. So this whole process, we wanted to really collaborate with everyone that was involved. RSM really likes the book Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, so I've kind of connected that with those principles. So our first step is always beginning with the end in mind. And it's all of that is just understanding where this wants to be, what the project wants to feel. It's understanding what the client is asking for, it's understanding the users in the context. And then design discovery, seeking first to understand this is leaving no stone unturned in terms of inspiration, and everything from sports to the architecture to the landscape. What can we take from that to really build a system? And then synergy and sharpen the saw. How do we layer that all together and synergize with all of the team members and implement it in a way that feels like it's supposed to be there and has been there? So beginning with the end in mind, this is just how do we ask the appropriate questions? It's really understanding the client, it's understanding the needs, it's understanding what kids are looking for at these campuses and also what donors are looking for. There was a lot of layering in this project with typography and different things to give donors that recognition that they were given to the campus. And then also just making it fun for students at the same time. Seeking first to understand, we had a really great opportunity go to the architecture design firm, which is Rios up in LA, and actually look at the materials and talk with them and sit down and really talk with one another to understand how we're layering all of these pieces in with each other and understanding their inspiration and our inspiration to make it feel super synergetic. We also were looking at a lot of influence from sports and kids and their interior design motifs, and the big one was circles, which seems obvious, but it was also implemented in a way that felt really layered on, which you'll see in some of the renderings later on. And then sharpen the saw. So how do we implement this throughout the whole campus? And so what we've done is really create this system that is a fairly simple form, but how it's implemented throughout the campus really speaks to the space itself. And so you see this exterior piece in the middle has this perforated mesh on the back. And that was something so that operations could hang banners and really get kids excited about things that were happening on campus. And then once we got into the interiors, we really sophisticated up the materials and changed to more woods and perforation, and then also felt, because we also wanted to make it something where kids could come up and touch the signs, because we know kids love to go up and touch things. And so the arrows and the perforation and the felt, those are actual dimensional spheres. And so we wanted it to feel intentional and integrated. And you'll see in some of the other renderings, Cody, if you'll go forward, how these get implemented. So seeing that top left image, they had these really beautiful acoustic felt walls. So how do we take our same design motif and implement it into that to make it feel like it was a part of that design? And also just certain typographic moves where in the exterior, we wanted it to feel really bold and really activated. So we used a heavier typeface. And then once we turned into the interiors, we went to more of a lighter typeface to give it more of a soft learning atmosphere approach. And just looking at how it was layered in, even from the architectural integration at that bottom left and some of these more welcoming pieces on that top right.
Great. Thanks, Ray.
Mhm.
So the next project I'm going to go through is kind of really, it's a community center here in Venice, right on Venice Boardwalk, just south of Santa Monica. And it's for the Jewish Federation of Los Angeles. And again, it's a building, the existing building had been there since 1965. And We worked with an architect here in LA called Bellsberg Architects, just down the street in Venice. And when we were brought in, the biggest challenge is how do you write a mission statement, right? How can we rally the whole team? It had been a small design group that had been working on the project to date for a few years, and we were brought in to develop the branding for the building. So working with the naming partner, the family that was donating the largest amount of money, just to say what it was. And then also the federation themselves, the architect, and also the community stakeholder group. So to do that as graphic designers, like we're brought in a lot to write a mission statement, like a vision statement. And it helps all the different partners along the consultant team to really rally behind one idea. Now they're going to approach it from their perspective, right? Whether you're an architect or a landscape designer or a client, and they might speak about it in different ways. But what's beautiful about it is we all have one mission. We have a shared objective. And in this case, RSM, we worked on this, and we used each one of these kind of words that we've highlighted as a way of really driving design solutions of what was it going to be inspiring to us? How could we talk about this community within Los Angeles in a deeper, more meaningful way? And really talk about the challenges and the struggle, but the sense of community and celebration and the permanency and the history of this community. And we felt like that idea of materiality and strength of material and relief and how do we look at typography in a different way was really our story to tell. It's a crazy building. It's pretty amazing. Hopefully, if you go to Venice, you can see it. It's right on Oceanfront Walk. But our role was kind of interesting because we were brought in to, again, develop the scope I identified, but also design the skin, which is like this amazing tessellated skin that's kind of pinned off of the building, almost like a veil. And so we worked with the client. One of the biggest issues is security at the building and being able to say what it is and not say what it is very blatantly. And so they didn't want too much attention, which is crazy when you look at this building. It pretty much screams attention to me. But we tried to really look at the Star of David and how do we translate that in a graphic way. So we probably did 300 or 400 studies of how to manipulate that across this building. And again, it was just an amazing exercise in what does a brand really mean, right? And so that idea of starting with an icon that means so much into something that means something different, but at the root, it's all kind of functioning together. And we talked a little bit earlier about collaboration when Ray was talking about her process with Lulu's Place. And we are often that bridge in design. We are brought in sometimes later than the architects and later than the other consultants. Sometimes they're already at a detail level and we're still at a conceptual level. And it allows us the opportunity to ask great questions. And we're saying, well, why did you do that? Can we do this? So a lot of our work is coming in, and these are just a series of slides where we look at, again, pre-existing design space that the architect has come up with. And we go through the sequence of how people navigate a space, right? And what's their first moment, what's their second moment, what's their third moment, and on. And in this case, really identifying what's that sequence of experience and what do we need to say and when do we need to say it. But it's also from a standpoint of how are people experiencing it? And in our world, it's not just looking at a book or a poster or like a package. People are experiencing space at different times of day, which is beautiful because in this case, you're right on the ocean and the light changes all day long. So really that was our theme is how to really capture light. One aspect of this was brand building. And again, I had personally quite a few direct meetings with the benefactors of the building and really talked with them and engaged them about what they wanted this building to be. Why was it meaningful to them? And we developed a brand together with them, which was really cool. And it gave us the opportunity, sorry, a little pixel here, to really layer on that brand to the entire project. So you start to see again how our brand takes on different forms and textures and patterns and even relief throughout that project. We translated that into donor walls and donor programs. And again, a lot of this becomes a very typographic, hierarchical exercise. You know, Courtney's class, you're like a type class, right? So a lot of this is the fundamentals of same size, two weights, three weights, one size. Like it's all the fundamental things we learn, right? But how are you translating that in material and light and hierarchy of naming? So it's pretty cool. It's really no different than what we're learning in school. So you'll see again, a lot of these, our approach was to capture light. So we used right on the beach, you know, we included a really thick, almost like a surfboard varnish on all the signs. So we did 3 millimeter thick of surfboard like varnish. So everything had this like depth to it, which is amazing. So everything's gray on white, pretty minimal approach. The last project is Connect. And again, this is a project that we worked on in Nashville, right at the heart of on Broadway, on the north end of Broadway. And it's called Fifth and Broadway, Fifth and B. Big, giant mixed use project. But the cool part is just the adjacency. So when we talk a lot about brand, right, we talk a lot about brand as it relates to community. What's the brand of a place? Not just the brand of a project or the brand of like a company or a corporation or a product. We brand places. So that idea of what's the essence of a place. We talk a lot about the brand is the experience is the brand, meaning like it's not what we say a brand is. Like there's, yes, you can create a logo, but ultimately it's how does that tribe believe in the brand? What's their takeaway of the brand? So for us, we dig into a lot of research about a community and how do we find inspiration and layering and stories that we can tell in space. So then, you know, conceptually, how do you start to get a mood board, you know, of what's the feeling this place should feel like? And how do we start to translate a brand into different materialities and lighting and to be able to give it different ways to read itself? So it's not just a universal approach. And for us, you know, translating those brands into the built environment is pretty systematic. You know, there's a lot of programming, which means like I'm going to study the architecture, we're going to study code, we're going to study what we can, what we can't do. But it's also how are people walking here? Is there transit? Are people parking here? What do they first see? What do they second see? It's almost like a giant, if you go back to kind of, you know, basics of composition, this is like composition on steroids. It's like, what do we see first? What do we see second? What do we see third? And how do we really curate that narrative throughout a series of different spaces? So again, kind of on our left is like our concepts. We work a lot in 3 dimension. You know, we live in 3 dimensional world. We design in 3 dimension. We try not to design flat because it doesn't solve the same problems that we need to. We document flat, but we design conceptually in 3 dimension. And we're always designing with context in mind. How are we layering materialities and architecture and telling the same story? Just like Ray said earlier, is we're brought in to be a bridge. We want it to feel like it was designed by one person, not 5 or 10 people. So even kind of coming up from the parking garage, there's a you know big history in Nashville of you know, again, like with hat show print and letterpress and printmaking and things like that, the history of kind of typography and great music posters. We wanted to make sure that we kind of honored that, but in a different way. So how do we translate and make that more relevant to today? So a lot of our surfaces were built on that narrative. And you see kind of some concepts and then how they, ultimately kind of ended up to a giant kind of letterpress wall, right? Which is just completely amazing. But a lot of our vertical circulation, meaning like how people move up from parking and they go up escalators and go down elevators, and how are people moving through a space, and how do we capture those moments? A lot of people, a lot of designers leave those moments kind of untouched, untalked about, and we love those moments. I think Will looked at, our first slide here, Will Colton, and he said, wow, look at those surfboards. Like, okay, those surfboard tails. Those became tenant panels for all the tenants at a food hall, right? But that's a moment. It's like an unpredictable thing that we like to discover. Um, so anyway, that was kind of the end of those case studies, but kind of as a reflection on that is at the root of it, people are at the center of what we do, as you can kind of see just from a brief, synopsis of our projects. But we want to make sure that every project we do touches all four of these. And every four can be slightly different proportion. It's like a great cookie recipe, right? I'm going to take the same ingredients, but make four different cookies. We do this all the time, right? So we always want to connect people at like a place where they can think about something, like something deeper than themselves. We always want to make sure it's activated. We always want to inspire people, but mostly we're seeking like connection. And I think everybody on the call, when you go somewhere, that's what you want to do is like seek a connection with somebody you're with or the place you're at or both. So, yeah, I think that's kind of our summary. And I think I'll hand it over to Holland for kind of next steps for Q&A, and I think we got a little bit of extra time, so that's good. We talk fast, so.
Love it. Thanks, guys. If you haven't had the chance already, now's the time to ask some questions. Again, there's a question box feature at the bottom. Or you can also use the chat too. I know we're a little bit more familiar with that. Um, I have one question from Dirk. Hello. It says, I'm curious about how your design team is structured, how many people are a part of it, and what kind of mix do you have between graphic, environmental, and brand designers? Cody, do you want to take that one?
Sure, sure, sure. That's a great question. First of all, we could look at our overall structure. So we have, again, four offices. We started in one office down in San Clemente. We never wanted to lose that. We call it the big family in the small house. Like that's the way we talk about our studio. And even though now we're in four houses, we work collaboratively. So there are, again, projects we work on independently per studio, but the majority of projects we are cross-teaming, which is amazing. It's a really exciting part of design. But as far as the balance of the team, I would say, our traditional branding side, we have a specific branding department, and that's roughly like five people. But a lot of people at RSM do branding. So we think that again, design is versatile. We're nimble. We can design anything. We could design a chair or a building or a poster or a package or a brand. We're kind of more traditionalists in that mindset where designers were not they were not so subjugated, right? We believe we can design anything if we ask the right question. But traditionally, that's how we're kind of broken up. Branding does their own projects, like they'll develop a brand, but in most cases, they're developing a brand for a project that the signage and graphics team will also work on. So they collaborate together.
Sweet.
Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, awesome. I have another question from Sydney that says, how do you work within the constraints of disabilities in your design process?
Mm.
Example, visual or physical disabilities?
Hmm.
Cody or Ray, you can take that one.
I can start if
Yeah,
you want.
you want to go for it,
Yeah.
Ray?
Yeah, I mean, we all have an ADA standards to make sure that any really important information we have tactile and braille, but it also is really important that when we're designing, we're thinking of all senses. So when we start thinking of concepts, we like to think about different senses, so sight, touch, taste, smell, all of those things. So how can we incorporate that? So we definitely like to think about that. And even with scale and even for ADA or children or elderly, every user, we want to make sure that there's something for everyone. So I think a lot of the time it just comes down to scale, making it tactile is a really big thing. We always love to give it dimensionality, not only for that reason, but also because it gives it that dimensionality and gives it those different layers. So I would say, just from my perspective, that's something that we really try to do, is make sure that all of the users have something to experience.
Yeah. I think that's a great tee up, Ray. I think there's kind of two case studies here. One is I do a lot of healthcare work, and so again, accessibility is a huge thing, not just like ADA, but it's also different health needs, right? Different generational needs. So I think it goes back to the user. It goes back to who are we designing this place for, and what are their needs, and what do we as designers need to solve? And there's a lot of different ways to do that. We're just starting a project at UCLA for the entire Westwood campus in advance of the Olympics. And that's a really interesting exercise about how can they transform public spaces and accessibility based on different modes of needs. And that's going to be an amazing project. So we're stay tuned on that. But it's interesting about how do you turn not just typical solutions that speak to kind of needs, but it's other design solutions, whether that's more artful or scale or sound or things like that that are more atypical.
Awesome. I have another one from John that says, when you designed the exterior form for the bar center, was the skin integrated by the architects or after construction by RSM and its vendors? Please explain the process.
Oh, interesting. Yes. Ultimately, yes, the architect, it was within the construction drawings that the architect provided, and then the GC is building off of that, right? It was a specialty fabricator, but all of the coordination was handled by the architect. We were brought in really from a how do we translate a graphic language into their facade system?
Nice. Um, Kaden asks, when creating things like signage and other physical aspects, how do you approach material usage? Are you given a catalog of ones you can use, or do you have to do
Hmm.
intensive research on which ones match the most with the vision?
Man, I wish I could have a catalog. I don't know. Ray, do you want to talk about that? You're good
Yeah,
with
sure.
material.
A lot of it depends on the project itself. So we try to have a lot of coordination with the architecture team and the interiors team. But when it comes down to it, our bread and butter material is painted aluminum. And so that's a big one where we're just color matching and giving it some different finishes or faux finishes and things like that. But we also do work in different things like woods and tiles. And the more that we can actually coordinate with the architect and interiors to use the same materials that they are using, just in a different signage form, that's what we want to do. But if we're doing a project where it's already built, it's been up for 10 years and we need a match, then that's something where we're using some more design power to replicate with different finishes.
Nice. Rita asks, within the team, for example, the branding team, how would the work be distributed to each member?
That's a great question.
I can also answer that if you
Yeah,
want.
go for it, Ray.
Yeah, I would just for examples with the RO and Lulu's, we typically have a project director, and then we have a few team members, and then we kind of divide and conquer. But it's very much a collaboration within the team. But usually we have different concept directions, and maybe one team member goes with one concept direction, the other with another, but we're still kind of going with each other at the same time. With branding, I would say it's a similar approach where we have kind of our master leader, and then we have a couple designers under that, and we kind of divide and conquer. But the whole thing is still a collaboration, just under one team.
Sweet. Dirk asks, in the architecture and built environment world, Value engineering is such a big part of the process. How would you get your creative ideas approved when they often come with a higher cost or push beyond the usual limits?
That's a fantastic question. That I think is maybe one of the biggest questions. And not even a question, it's just the scenarios that we face on a daily basis. I think RSM, it's kind of a unique animal because we do everything from kind of strategy and concept design all the way through our own what's called bid documents. Like the client is going to bid out our design through multiple fabricators, and then the client will pick that fabricator to build our pieces. Invariably, there's VE, right? Now, we've done some strategies from the design process where we'll say, when we begin a project, we need the budget. Every project has a budget for the work that we're doing. And so when we begin, more often than not, we know a target of what we're trying to design to. If we don't know that target, we don't continue past a certain point. So we try to set up these gates where we're openly communicating and asking those questions, and we're using that number to help either educate the client, like, hey, that number's too low. You're not going to be able to do that based on this approach, or it seems fine, and we're going to design to it, right? So that's kind of the front-loaded part of it, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. But as you get into fabrication, invariably, again, there's different trades. So we're a design firm. We're not a builder. We don't build things, right? We design things. And so when we get another expert across the table from us, we respect that person because they could say, hey, if we built this a little bit differently, it's going to be more effective, or it's less material, or it cuts cost, but it's the same design intent. There's different communication that happens. So ultimately, the VE is always a designer's kind of in their mind a nightmare, right? But it doesn't have to be. We do so many projects that for us, we've kind of turned the tables on it and try to incorporate it up front. It helps us.
Awesome. Courtney asks, what do you look for in a portfolio for graphic designers? Cody, you want to take that one?
I think Ray and I should take that one. But from my perspective, I mean, I was a teacher for 25 years. I used to teach portfolio studio at Art Center. So that was my class, right? So I would tell my students, again, skills are baseline. Skills are baseline. If you're being recruited from Art Center or LCAD or School of Visual Arts or wherever, Cal Arts, skills are baseline. You're all good. Okay. So what's next? What's on top of that? So I don't hire based on skill. I hire based on things that I cannot teach. Curiosity, open-mindedness, right? Proactiveness, right? So that's what I hire on. I hire on values. I don't hire on skills. But Ray might say something different.
No, I think that was a great basis. I think what I would just add on top of that is similar to what we were talking about just with our design process. Is just, I feel like as designers, we can all design something beautiful. But when you have the why behind it of how you got there and showing, like Cody said, your curiosity of understanding the design brief and how you got to the solution and showing that process, I think really showcases your mind and your creative mind. So as much of the process as possible, I think, is the most beneficial versus just your solution.
Awesome. Another one from Dirk says, could you share more about the key skills and knowledge that help a designer succeed on projects that blend architecture and environmental design? I'm asking because many school projects focus on things like branding, posters, or websites. How much architectural education or understanding do you think is needed or most helpful for this kind of work?
I can start to answer that because my education is purely in graphic design, just from LCAD. I learned from EGD while I was at school, and I had virtually no experience or education within EGD and architecture and all of that. But kind of to build off of what Cody and I were saying, it's just if you have the curiosity to learn about it, you can do it. Because at the end of the day, we are graphic designers, we're just applying it into a different way. And so the more that you just generally know about space and how people move and hierarchy of what people need in terms of information, it's the same tools, just applied differently. I don't know, Cody, if you want to add on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a fair amount of knowledge, but I mean, because you have to know how to read plans and section architectural drawings and understand the physicality of space, right? But a lot of those things, again, I learned on the job. I didn't formally go to school for this, so it helped. My grandfather was an architect, but that does help. But I learned all that at RSM, really.
Hmm.
And so I think again, you're just bridging storytelling. It's just a different medium and a different scale, right? But I think again that curiosity and open-mindedness and anyone that does really, really well at RSM has all of those things. And they jump in and they figure it out.
Awesome. I have a question. This will probably be maybe our second to last or last question, depending on how long this takes. But it says, my question for the team is, how much time do you allow for coming up with a design? Do you often feel pressured to work under a time constraint, or would you say you work on a design as long as it takes, as long as it meets the client's vision and requirements? Ray, you want to do
Sure.
that one?
Yeah. I wish we had all of the time in the world. We always want more time. It comes down to a systematic amount of time that we're given, just in terms of proposals and things like that. But the way that we have it structured in our design process allows time in our phasing. So we have something that's called a discovery phase. And that's really giving designers time to ask all of these questions that we were talking about understanding the users, the architecture, the space, the history, all of those things. And then we have another phase of development where we actually begin those concepts. So we are given an amount of time that we can allocate to these different phases. So we do have to be cognizant of that. But the more time that we lay the baseline of asking those questions, it really guides the design anyway and helps with that time constraint.
The other thing to add is like the design process within a design studio is really no different than what's happening in your curriculum. It's like this. It's just drawn out, over 10 weeks or 14 weeks or whatever the term is that you're used to. So you go through the same stages of discovery, the same conceptualization, research, whatever it is, and development, and then detailing. So we do all the same things. But again, in an educational setting, it's just drawn out for the purpose of slowing down and really identifying the tools and the craft and the moments to examine design, right? And the questions you ask in an educational forum. But ours, you speed those things up. And so projects are all different. I mean, we have like 300 projects, across every studio. So all of those are different. And some of them, I have projects that last 7 years. I have a 7-year project right now. And clearly that's a very different timetable. And so there's a lot of time in between things. So you're designing and waiting, designing and waiting. Other projects are much smaller and you're having to make quick decisions and the teaming is fast and it's great collaboration and you're in and out and you're done in like a month. But again, those are very different kinds of projects,
Mhm.
but you're applying the same design methodology. Sometimes the approach is different or the teaming is different to try to get a different result.
Awesome. I think that's all the time we have for questions. I'll move us along to one other thing. Um, when you guys exit this meeting in a few minutes, a survey will pop up in your browser automatically. Please fill out the survey so we can see just insights from today. And we're honestly really open to doing this another time. So this would just help us just glean from today. And then also, once you fill out the survey, you will be entered into a raffle. Um, we'll do the raffle early next week. So if you could complete the survey by Friday, that would be awesome. We're gonna send 3 people this little mystery box of goodies. Um, Plus, in the box, we're gonna give out a MoMA design store gift card in there as well. So please fill out the survey and then we'll raffle off 3 people to win the prizes.
So jealous.
Me too. And then next slide. Just wrapping up here. Thank you guys for joining us. We had so much fun today meeting you guys and hearing your questions. Please feel free to reach out to all 3 of us, any of us, via email. I left them there on the slide. And then we also obviously have our website, which is kind of like our home base for all of our, project, our portfolio essentially, and ways that you can reach out to us. We also post a lot of articles so you can keep up with what we're working on and what we're discussing. And then we, of course, have social media. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Pinterest if you want to follow along with our work. But thank you guys for coming today. It was a pleasure. It was so fun.
Yeah, this was awesome.
Yeah, it was super awesome, guys.
All
Thank you.
right. Thanks,
Thank
John.
Thank you,
Guys,
guys.
that was
Thanks,
awesome.
All
everyone.
right, take it easy.
Thanks, Courtney.
Bye, Holland.
Bye.
Bye.